You have done this before. You are outside, a park, a trail, a beach, somewhere with open space, and you see an animal. A deer at the edge of a tree line, a fox crossing the path ahead of you, a bird on the ground close enough that you can see the detail of its feathers. And you stop. You go still. You do not make any sudden movements. You are not threatening it in any way. You are not carrying a weapon. You are not making noise. You are, by any reasonable measure, the least dangerous version of yourself that exists. And the animal looks at you and runs. Not because you did anything wrong, not because you failed to communicate your intentions clearly enough, but because something in that animal's nervous system registered your presence and made a decision that did not involve any deliberation at all. You are a human. You are dangerous. Leave. This happens billions of times a day across every ecosystem on Earth. In forests, in savannas, in urban parks, in suburban backyards. Animals that have never been hurt by a human, that live in areas where hunting has been banned for generations, that have been observed regularly by the same researchers for years, still startle, still flee, still register a human presence as a threat signal that overrides almost everything else. The question is why? Not why animals are scared of hunters, not why animals that have been harmed by humans associate humans with danger, but why the fear exists even when the human is kind, even when the animal has no personal history of harm, even when the evidence of the immediate environment suggests there is nothing to be afraid of. The answer reaches back much further than any individual animal's experience, and it reveals something about the relationship between humans and the rest of the animal kingdom that is more complicated and more ancient than most people realize. The fear that wild animals feel in the presence of humans is not learned, it is inherited. This distinction matters enormously. A learned fear is acquired through individual experience. An animal that was chased develops an association between humans and danger and responds accordingly. That kind of fear can be unlearned. It can fade across generations that do not have the same experience. It is fundamentally plastic. An inherited fear is different. It is encoded in the nervous system before birth, present from the first moments of life, and does not require any confirming experience to activate. It is there because the ancestors of this animal who had it survived at higher rates than the ancestors who did not. And it persists even when the environmental conditions that originally selected for it no longer apply. The evidence that human fear in animals is largely inherited, not learned, comes from several directions. Animals raised in complete isolation from humans, with no negative exposure and no opportunity to learn from other members of their species, still show fear responses to human presence. Studies with ungulates, deer, elk, antelope, raised in captivity from birth show elevated stress hormones and flight responses when exposed to unfamiliar humans, even when those humans make no threatening movement. Island populations of animals that evolved without any human presence, the Galápagos being the most famous example, show dramatically reduced fear of humans compared to mainland populations of related species. The Galápagos marine iguana will allow a human to stand within arm's reach without flinching. Its mainland relatives flee at much greater distances. The difference is not in any individual experience, it is in the evolutionary history of the population. For most animals that live alongside humans today, that evolutionary history includes hundreds of thousands of years of Homo sapiens being one of the most effective and wide-ranging predators on Earth. The ancestors of the deer in your local park had ancestors that were hunted by humans across multiple continents for at least 300,000 years. The fear that lives in that deer's nervous system is not a mistake or an overreaction. It is the accumulated survival wisdom of every ancestor that successfully identified a human as dangerous and acted accordingly. To understand why animals fear humans specifically, not just predators in general, it helps to understand what humans look like from an ecological perspective. Humans are, by the measures that matter to prey animals, an extraordinarily unusual predator. Most predators that animals evolved alongside have predictable behavioral signatures. A lion stalks, a wolf pack coordinates, an eagle circles. These signatures are detectable. They involve specific movement patterns, specific sounds, specific smells, and prey animals have evolved detection systems tuned to exactly these cues. The fear response is activated by specific triggers that correlate with genuine danger. Humans do not fit this pattern. Humans kill at distances that no other predator matches, first with thrown weapons, then with bows, then with firearms. The distance at which a human becomes dangerous is far greater than the distance at which a human becomes detectable through the cues that prey animals are tuned to read. A human standing and still and quiet at 200 meters is doing nothing that a wolf at 200 meters would do. But a human with a rifle at 200 meters is more dangerous than any wolf at any distance. This mismatch between the behavioral cues that usually signal danger and the actual danger that humans represent created a specific selection pressure. Animals that fled from humans at greater distances in response to subtler cues survived at higher rates than animals that waited for the usual predator danger signals to activate before fleeing. The result is what ecologists call the landscape of fear. Research by Zanet and colleagues, and expanded by work on what is now called the ecology of fear, has shown that the mere presence of humans in a landscape changes animal behavior across the entire ecosystem, not just the behavior of animals that are being hunted. Animals spend less time foraging, cover more ground looking for escape routes, use habitat differently, reproduce at lower rates, all in response to human presence, regardless of whether any hunting is occurring. In one study, the playback of human voices through speakers in a South African wildlife reserve caused animals to flee at rates 2 to 4 times higher than the playback of lion roars. The animals were more afraid of a recorded human voice than the sound of the apex predator they had evolved alongside for millions of years. That is not a phobia. That is an accurate calibration of the actual risk landscape. The more interesting question is why the fear persists in populations where humans are not hunting, where the threat that originally selected for the fear response is no longer present. The answer is that evolution is slow, and the conditions that would select against human fear have not existed long enough or been consistent enough to produce meaningful change in most populations. For a fear response to be selected against, animals with less fear need to survive and reproduce at higher rates than animals with more fear. In most environments, even today, this is not reliably the case. Hunting pressure exists in most parts of the world. Human behavior is unpredictable enough that the animal cannot distinguish between a tourist with a camera and a hunter with a rifle from the behavioral cues available at safe distances. The cost of over-responding to human presence, missing some foraging opportunities, expending some energy, fleeing unnecessarily, is far lower than the cost of under-responding. The Galápagos case is instructive precisely because it represents the exception. Those island populations evolved without any human predation pressure for long enough that the fear response genuinely did attenuate. It took complete absence of human predation across enough generations with enough consistent survival advantage for the less fearful individuals to shift the population. Most animals alive today have not had that experience. Their ancestors were hunted. Their range overlaps with areas where hunting still occurs. The fear that lives in their nervous systems is still, from an evolutionary perspective, a reasonable response to the actual risk landscape they occupy, even when the specific human in front of them is holding a granola bar and trying to take a photograph. The animal that ran from you was not wrong. It was not confused or neurotic or failing to read the situation correctly. It was running a threat assessment system that had been refined across thousands of generations of encounters with an animal that is, by the ecological record, the most dangerous predator this planet has ever produced. The kindness in the moment does not register against that history. The individual intention does not override the inherited pattern. The animal's nervous system does not have access to your biography, your values, or your camera. It has access to your silhouette, your smell, your movement pattern, and a very long memory stored not in the individual animal, but in the population's genes that says, when in doubt about a human, leave. This is not a failure of communication between species. It is a success of evolution doing exactly what evolution does, storing survival information in the most durable medium available and making it available to every member of the population without requiring them to personally learn the lesson. The deer at the tree line was not afraid of you. It was afraid of everything that humans have been to animals for 300,000 years. You just happened to be the one standing there.